You're riding the train at Silver Dollar City, you're excited to see Alfie and Ralphie bowling, and then there's only one of them. What happened? Where's the other robber? And what kind of changes does that mean? If you've ever had the chance to ride the train at Silver Dollar City, you know that normally there are two train robbers out in the woods waiting for you, Alfie and Ralphie bowling. But sometimes it's just Alfie. Ralphie got lost, or he didn't make it out of jail, or it's Ralphie. He could be wandering in the woods somewhere. So what happened? Why is there only one train robber? What changes do they make to the show? How do we adjust when that happened? Well, it's not something that we liked. We honestly, on the train, we much preferred having two robbers for a number of reasons. But there were times that we had to go with just one of us, and it did mean some changes. So what happened first? Why is there only one? Well, generally it can be summed up in one simple statement. They're short-staffed. There could be a number of reasons for this. Maybe somebody got sick and called in. Maybe somebody's car broke down. What happened sometimes is we had guys that were trained on several rides, and one of the other rides ended up short-staffed, and so they would pull one of us to make sure they could keep that ride open. Sometimes scheduling, we just ended up with not enough hours to schedule completely. Things happen. And so generally it meant if we ended up short-staffed, we were short a person, or somebody was late, or something like that, the first position you pull is a robber. And then you'd go with just one in the woods. None of us like that. I mean, trust me, a one-man show sucks for several reasons, and we didn't like to do it. If we knew that we were going to have to do one-man robber shows, it meant a long, exhausting day for that guy in the woods, because he was having to do everything versus sharing it. It also meant between shows, you were kind of stuck out there by yourself going, this stinks all alone. The script was designed to have two robbers. The lines are written with two robbers. Everything is designed to have two robbers out there, and then when you're short the one, well... So if we did end up with just one robber, it meant that we would have to make some changes and some adjustments. The first thing we would do is we would actually look at who's going to be the robber in the woods. We had some guys, you'd have some that would come in just for the summer, seasonal help and so forth, and we oftentimes didn't want to leave them out there by themselves just because being a solo robber, it's an extra effort, it's extra work, it's extra energy, and there's changes you have to make that sometimes we hadn't had a full chance to prep them on. So we might make a quick switch and put one of our experienced guys out in the woods. When I was there, typically it would be Rick, Josh, one of the two Kevins, or me. We'd have 5 guys and we would kind of send us out there. Joe was there the first year too, and Joe would do solo robber, but Joe preferred to be a conductor though, so typically one of us would end up solo, and I did a good number of solo shows. It does mean that you have to change what you're going to do. Our robbery show typically had one of 2 intros. Once you get stopped and the conductor comes up and the robber tells him,
"What do you think you're doing stopping my train out here in the middle of nowhere?"
You just relax. We stopped you to rob you.
What?
I mean, warn you.
Warn me? About what?
Yankees!
Yankees?
Up around that bend, you've got 9 of the biggest, meanest looking Yankees y'all never done saw. They've all got these huge woodwork clubs, and they're swinging and swatting. But don't y'all worry, they can't hit much of nothing.
Why is that?
Well, these New York Yankees.
There's 2 different versions of the show at this point. One of them, the most common one you see when you have 2 robbers, is what we call the hey, hey, hey.
Well, Ralphie and I, we sneaked up on them. We heard them talking.
Well, what'd they say?
Tell them, Ralph.
Is it, woo! Yeehaw!
Hey, hey, hey.
Well, that show doesn't work quite as well with the solo robber. We tried it, but generally what we ended up doing is we would do a version of the show called Back Up the Train in our lingo. And what that ends up meaning is that Alfie ends up doing this little cheerleader routine, and
they're pretty mean, too.
well, if they're so mean, there's only one thing I know to do.
That's right.
Hey, Ichabod, back this train up!
What? No. Wait, you little chick, you get
okay, okay. I get it. I get it. You done now?
No, one more time.
Look, I can't go up there and fight 9 Indians by myself with one Uss's shotgun. I'd get killed.
Yeah, you probably.
But of course, we adjust it so that there's just one robber. And so because there's only one robber, you don't have Ralphie echoing Alfie, so he tries to get the train to do the echo part.
Chicken, you heard me. C-H. Icken. You gotta go down there and fight him. Fight him? Fight him. You know what fight him is. Hey, y'all, help me convince him to fight him. Give me an F. F. Give me an I. I. Give me a T.
T!
Give me an Fight him.
Fight him!
Fight him.
Fight him!
Fight, fight, fight. Push back, shove back, way back.
And it usually works pretty well. Usually, if you've got a high energy robber that can get the train going. It also means that the conductor has to pick up some of the lines that Ralphie would be saying, because otherwise you end up with no line being said. And so the conductor picks up a couple lines, Alfie picks up a couple lines get dropped, and you really have to be on the same page as a conductor and a robber to be able to get the show to flow. Otherwise you end up at spots where you're kind of going, wait, that's Ralphie's line. There's no Ralphie. And I have had a couple shows where one of the guys forgot the line they were supposed to pick up and you just stare at each other. Help! Bail me out! It's one of the reasons we tried to make sure it was experienced guys out there, because they could pick that up. There would be other parts of the show that we would change. For example, there is a part of the show, on a longer show, where Alfie teaches Ralphie how to rob the train.
Okay, you remember that talk we had last night up in the cabin?
I sure do, about the birds and the fleas. We're gonna go.
No, not that one. A train robber.
Train robber. No.
All right, I'm gonna learn it again. Pay attention.
Okay.
First thing you need is put your hand out just like this. Good, good. Now put a mean, nasty look on your face.
Well, I'm in a nest.
You get more money that way.
Okay.
You call that nasty?
She does.
All right, since you've taken such like that cow, I'm gonna let you go down and practice on it.
Oh boy.
Go down there, look her square in the eye, and say, "Give me all your gold and silver, blockhead."
Give me all your gold and silver, you blockhead.
Ralph!
And those kinds of lines also would get cut out, simply because there's nobody to teach. I would do a version of it where I would kind of talk to myself as I got ready to rob the train, and, told the train essentially what I was going to do while reminding myself how I'm going to do it. But it wasn't as good. You could make it work and you could get some laughs, but it's just not as funny as if you've got another guy there to bounce off of when you're doing it. Other examples of lines where the conductor might help out is you've got a standard line where the conductor, as he's leaving, says,
"Yeah, I got you a good idea. Stay away from my train. Come back, find you boys anywhere near it, I'll have you a surprise."
Surprise!
normally Ralphie is like,
Ooh, I love surprises. What do you got? How about a new belly button?
Hey, you can give my surprise to Ralph.
Yeah, you give my surprise to Ralph too.
Wait, I'm Ralph.
I don't want another belly button.
and then Alfie typically would say,
Why don't you want another belly button?
but if there's not two robbers, Alfie is doing this whole bit, and then the conductor has to say, well, why don't you want a surprise?
I don't need another belly button.
Well, why not?
Well, I got one already. Another be a naval reserve.
So it's an example of the conductor having to pick up the lines that would normally be said by another robber, because there isn't another robber there. And you would have instances like that all throughout the show. And just different things that you had to adjust and do to make a show work with only one robber that normally would be two. And the same thing would kind of happen with Ma. There were a couple of us that we could do a variation of Ma with only one robber. But again, there's some of those lines that you can't do and they don't work as effectively. So most of the time, if we had a solo robber, we'd cut Ma the Ma part of the show out. Partially because it didn't work as well, and partially because that poor robber is pouring out so much energy trying to keep this show going that they're exhausted. And so we cut it short to save the robber a little bit. And this is one of the key things, is if you're a solo robber, you're really having to pour out the energy just to kind of maintain what two people were able to do. A lot of people don't realize a solo show can be very difficult because you're carrying everything. This is something, if you ever go to a comedy club, a comedian will realize. Or if you go see a one-man show at a theater, it's something that a lot of us don't realize until we get put into that position where we're having to carry it. It's not just a monologue. You're doing it all. And it can be exhausting, especially when you're trying to get that audience involved and responding and playing a part as well. And that's kind of one of the keys to a solo show, is you've really got to get the train audience almost as another player in there so you have somebody to feed off of. So you trim out some things, you'd adjust some things, you would say some lines very different, and try to get the train to pick up part of it. Usually it worked, sometimes it didn't. It also meant things like, when it came time to rob the train, instead of going down to the middle of the train and then each of you go different directions and Ralphie meets the conductor up at the front, well, now you've only got one of you. So instead of going down to the middle, you tell everybody, hey, I'm going to come by, and you go to the back of the train, and then instead of robbing half the train, you've got to rob the whole entire train in the same amount of time that it took two of you to do half. So you got to speed up the robbing a lot too. You don't get as much time to interact and goof off and play with the passengers on the train as you might if there were two of you, because you know you've got to get up to the front and meet that conductor and get going. You still do some, but not as much. Generally, if you're doing solo shows, though, you were really hoping it was only for a couple of trains. Maybe one of the robbers had to go give the conductor's breaks up at the station, so he was up there and you were doing solo shows briefly. Those times when you had to do it all day, oh my goodness, I had a couple of those days where we had one time somebody got sick. We had another time that we had to rotate guys because somebody else was needed somewhere else. And it was just exhausting. And by the end of the day, normally as a robber, you're tired when you get out at the end of the day anyways, and you're kind of walking slow. But when you're a solo, I mean, you're just toast. At the end of the day, your brain is absolutely fried, and you're just kind of walking along going, ugh, because you've been doing the work of two people by yourself. And especially on bad weather days when it was excessively hot, or if it was rainy or something else, it just made it miserable. You could carry on, you could do some of the things, you could make it work. But having one robber when you should have two, no, not a good option. Not a good option at all. So that's a little look at what might happen if you've only got one robber instead of two, why you ended up with one, changes and adjustments you make, and honestly, the fact on the train that all of us preferred two-man robber shows. One robber shows were not fun, not ideal. We did them. We were happy to do them, but we would have much preferred to have two. So have you seen a one-man robber show? Was it as good as two? Was it not as good? What changes did they make? I'd love to hear, because everybody does it a little different. We're all a little different. Definitely a little different. Anyways, we would do our own kind of deal. We had our own routines and adjustments that we would make. So I'd love to hear what others have done. Please, feel free to share it in the comments below and what you thought. Did you prefer one, two? Did it make a difference? Hey, maybe you were one of those lucky ones that saw 3 or 4 robbers. Yes, we did do that sometimes. Share it in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button. Share the video if you haven't, and subscribe if you haven't. What are you waiting for? Let's hit 30,000 subscribers. Thank you as well to my financial supporters, my patrons, my YouTube members. They make so much possible, and I form great friendships. I get behind the scenes info and so much more. If you want to know about that, as well as a bunch of other info, check the description below. Thank you so incredibly much for watching. God bless. And having been that robber, so what changed? Okay, I'm like totally off in the woods. First thing we might do is we might do that, but that would be kind of scary. Joe was there the first year too, and Joe would do solo robber, but he much preferred to be a conductor, and so one of us tended to do it. Once you got up there, there's robbers out there. Yeah, of course there's robbers out there. And so he gets the train doing the cheerleader part with, oh my goodness. It also means that the conductor has to pick up a couple of the lines that why can't I talk right? Ugh! It also means that the conductor has to pick up some of the lines. Oh my goodness. It also means that this is something that comedians, when they do the stage, that might be the case if you were covering for, say, lunches and the robber... Ah! Oh, I can't talk. Oh, this is annoying. Okay. So that's a little look at... That's a little look at me messing everything up. Lots of bloopers in this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to know about contact information, fan pages, merchandise, and more, please be sure to check the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to know when I have new ones, well, make sure you hit that subscribe button right up there. And if you want to see another one of my videos, well, I've got a great one for you right here. And a huge thank you to these wonderful people here who support me on Patreon and with YouTube memberships. They get behind the scenes information, special perks, and more. If you'd like to know more about that, well, make sure you check that button right there. Thank you so much.